Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this edition of BRM Brown Bag. I'm your host, Suresh GP, and we are into episode number 21. Today, I have a good friend and a new BRM into the space, Jasbir Kooner, who is the Director of Business Relationship Management at Englobe. Prior to joining Englobe, she has worked as a business and data analyst for international enterprises ranging from retail to tile installation. In these roles, she was responsible for data storytelling that includes both the internal employees as well as external customers and partners. She has always believed that anyone and everyone can use data in their business, and with the right story, it can allow for a healthy supply chain, increase in sales revenue, as well as customer satisfaction. In business, everything is connected. Absolutely true. So adoption of this type of thinking led to one of her past employers winning Vendor of the Year at Walmart. So please welcome Jasbir to our episode of the BRM Brown Bag. Thanks, Jasbir, for taking time, and I hope you're doing well and staying safe.
Definitely great to be here, Suresh. Thank you for having me on the show. And to everyone that's watching, I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. So, Jasbir, you're quite new to the role of BRM and you're returning to the world of IT after 15 years. How did this come about? Give us a quick memory rundown layer of what has happened so far and what attracted you to be going into the BRM role.
Definitely. So actually, my schooling, my bachelor's was done in computer science. So I have a solid background in the programming ecosystem, and then did a minor in business in information systems, and was super excited to get into the whole, outside of school, starting to make your own money. And my first job was actually in IT in my early 20s. And loved what I was doing. Couple months into the role, realized that they had hired a new individual, and they were paying him more than me. So when I went and I spoke to my manager, and I'm like, listen, he's not as educated as I am. He doesn't have the experience. Like, I'm looking at all of these factors. None of them are meeting. Like, just enlighten me. And he couldn't. He had absolutely no explanation for what happened, and at the same time he refused to even negotiate with me. So I was like, you know what, this whole IT thing, maybe I'm not cut out for it, right? It's not where I should be. And I made the conscious decision, I'm going to move from IT into the business world because it may be a bit easier as a colored female.
Sure.
And the reason I'm saying this, Suresh, is because I get a lot of contacts on LinkedIn where it's colored females, and they're like, oh, wow, thank you so much for being in the IT realm. You're really an inspiration, and so much positivity. Right. And looking at where I am today, I just want everyone that's watching to really know the backstory, right? Sure. Started off there, shifted, went into business, and then got this opportunity at Englobe, which it always happens that you're not looking for anything. Got a LinkedIn request saying, hey, would you be interested in a BRM role? And I'm like, I don't really know what a BRM is. And as I spoke to he was my boss at Englobe prior, he was like, you're already doing a BRM role at Schluter Systems. You don't know it. And that relationship aspect, that's what the BRM role is built on. Right. And I'm like, you know what, give me a couple days. Let me go on the side, do my analysis, really see, am I really an unofficial BRM? And so went on to the BRM Institute. What a great website, so much knowledge, and realized, yep, I am an unofficial BRM. So I'm going to take this opportunity. I met with the VP at Englobe for IT. And when you speak to somebody and you're like, this is a different vibe, and it's going to be different here than right. where I was 15 years ago. Sure. And pretty much after I had that meeting with him, it was solidified, and I'm like, I'm going to go in and been really lucky with the IT team at Englobe. All of the individuals that are working there, from infrastructure, applications, PMO, great individuals, great mentors, friends, coaches, and learning a lot in the past year and a half.
Excellent. So in every episode, Jasbir, we look out a theme for our audience to look out for. So this theme for us today is around new to the BRM role. But you've been always a proponent of being humble, being curious, being courageous. So let's talk a little bit about that before we get into deeper part of it. Why do you think that as a BRM, we need to be humble, be curious, and be courageous? What does that stand as terms of values or principles that has driven you to be an effective BRM?
So this is my definitions for all three. From the humble aspect is I've found out from all of the roles that I've been in, every individual I meet always has something to provide, some knowledge that I wasn't aware of. So this is where I always keep myself humble, and going into any meeting, any interaction, I'm like, all right, I'm here to learn from the other individual. And what is it that they could teach me? That's the humble aspect. Be curious. I'm a big Steve Jobs fan. Right. And just the whole curious aspect it's within my DNA. I love learning. And if I don't know something, I love where we are today, where you can just go on Google and you can get an answer. Back in the day, it's like I was running to the library, right? And you had the encyclopedias, and you're trying to find that one word, or that you could narrow it down to get some sort of education around it. And here it's like you do a simple Google search, everything's there for you. And the be courageous aspect is, a lot of times I've noticed this in myself, where you create this plan, and it's this magical plan from A to Z, and it's supposed to work out in this perfect way, right? And once you start to execute it, it doesn't go out the way you planned. Right. And so this is where the be courageous part is. You know what? If something doesn't work out, what's the next step, right? How can I pivot? How can I move? So that's where the be courageous part is more of the action oriented. Just don't sit with a good idea. Go see how it runs, and then be courageous enough to pivot and move forward.
Excellent. I think that's a great way to summarize being humble, being curious, and courageous. Now, you've been into this role. Like, what are some of the challenges you experienced when you first started into the role of BRM?
So the first challenge off of the bat, which I think we were all experiencing, was COVID. And I started at Englobe right at the peak of COVID, where all of my past relationships and meeting individuals were more face-to-face for the past 15 years, right? And Teams and everything, it's more for international companies. You're using it for other countries to be able to communicate with them. But internally, it was, you just kind of go to the office and you're like, hey, how's it going? So starting at Englobe and just everything being remote, and trying to create this relationship. You're at a new company, it's a new industry, and due to COVID, you're online. And so that was one of the biggest challenges I had. The cool aspect of it was that everyone was going through the same thing. Right. So we were all kind of able to rely on each other and kind of, be like, all right, how are you gauging this? How's this going? And it's been over a year, I think. It's over a year before I actually saw a couple of my teammates and stuff. And now it's moving more into a hybrid aspect, because as a BRM, it's so important for us to meet with our partners and just have that face-to-face conversation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, was it changing your own dimension to come back to IT? Is the IT BRM role a very different one to the rest of the other BRMs? Do you see that more focused towards, you have BRMs more towards IT, or do you see also BRMs from other functions like HR, sales, marketing within your own organization?
So right now at Englobe, we are BRM does sit within the IT department.
Right.
But prior to that, in the unofficial BRM role,
Right.
I felt that you were doing a lot of the same stuff,
Right.
and the tools I would have loved to have back then. So when I took my BRMP, and all of a sudden you had this toolkit,
Right.
and I'm like, if I had this 5 years ago, right, that would have been so awesome.
Right.
So on that end, I feel we're doing the same thing. In IT, it's more of the tech speak sometimes.
Right.
That you kind of have to go through that communication. Whereas in business, no matter which department on, let's say, business side that you're speaking to,
Right.
it's the language is usually the same.
Right. Yeah. So that I think that summarizes in terms of how do you see that as a shift. So what advice would you give to other BRMs if they are kind of stepping into this role as a first-time BRM? What should they do and not do, like do's and don'ts that you would recommend?
So for me, I think my biggest challenge at the beginning was asking for help. And it was, where you think you're kind of going to be able to do it on your own. And so I would say, if you're new to the role, it was only when I started to reach out to the community. And there were so many great individuals that said, hey, I have an hour, let's connect,
Yeah.
and I can tell you how I do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And just being able to get that aspect of,
Right.
when you're speaking to other individuals, you kind of, you get a better understanding. All industries are not the same. All companies are not the same. There's
Right.
no, here's a framework, run it, and you're going to work really well, right? And I
Right.
think that's what I got. The more I spoke to other BRMs, it was like, yeah, you know what, test it out. Some things will work, some things won't.
Right.
And then based on that, you gauge it, and then you move forward.
Sure.
So for anyone that's in the new BRM role, I would say, first of all, the BRM Institute, there's the chat forum there where there's always so many great questions. I'm learning so much from that, right? And then just online on LinkedIn, that's what I did, is there were certain individuals, when I was looking at their profiles, I was like, you know what? I think that having a conversation with them would really help.
Right.
And super great on that end. So really grateful to all of them. The second thing I want to say is just read a book recently called Leadership is Language by David Marquette. And he was talking about blue work, which is thinking, and red work, which is action. Okay. And, with the PMP in projects, like, we know when we go through it, we start off with planning. You go through the whole process, and at the end, you do lessons learned, right? So there's this whole thinking, action thinking that's done. And not only in the BRM role, but in other roles that I've been in, I find where we kind of get so stuck in the action. We feel action is what produces, right? And we're just going, that we never take the time to really think, right? And say, all right, I'm going to allocate this half an hour, and I'm going to really think about, these projects or this completed item that I did. What worked, what didn't, how can I be better, right? So this is where I'm kind of really focusing on that, and making sure that I do the blue work. Right. And with that, now the way that it's working for me is I allocate half an hour, right, every couple of days, where I could really just sit down, be focused. And sometimes it's hard because you have to come face to face with your failures, right? That's the whole part of the thinking aspect. And then that's where lessons learned come in. All right, I failed at this. Why did I fail? What did I learn from it? And how can I use that learning for my next step? Right. And so from that, I would say for any new BRM, always make sure thinking is right there with the doing.
Well, I love the way that you talked about reflective learning, right? At the end of the day, it's not about the number of hours you work, it's the amount of work you put in the hours. So sometimes taking a break and a pause and trying to do some retrospective or in solitude actually opens a lot of new ideas, which is what you're calling as a think tank time. So you kind of, I always love to have this free spaces in my calendar which nobody touches this, but it's blocked. So it's kind of forcing yourself to think on a time where you're saying, okay, this is what I think I need to look at. It's been 2 weeks time. How are things working and what should I do? And it could be holistic, right? It's not just about your work alone. It's about your physical relationship. It's going to be your finance. It's going to be your hobbies, some of your interest, and with your family and friends. It could be various aspects, because to look at doing so much in one particular area that we miss the other part of the facets of life. So absolutely true in what you talked about. So you have been a proponent of reading a lot of books, Jasbir. So are there any books you would recommend that helped you during your transition from where you started off to being a BRM?
Definitely. So from the reading aspect, self-proclaimed bibliophile, worked in a library while I was going to school, and helped the library with their automation. So if you were to look at the barcodes, we were a library without barcodes at the beginning, and then every book that we would buy at the library used to touch my hands before it went upstairs. So if you open the book onto page 17, you always see my initials where it's approved and stuff. So always had loved the library. It was my getaway. Anytime I could, always wanted to go there. And started the Book a Week Challenge, which I came across about a year ago. Initially just wanted to see, am I capable of doing it, right? Because it was so intimidating. Can I really read a book each week? And finished that last year, and this year just decided to continue because I was learning so much, and it wasn't as hard as I thought. And everything is about priority. So I try to read about 40 to 50 pages a day, and I'm able to read the book during the week. The 3 books that right now I would definitely recommend for any new BRM. In choosing these books, I just want to say for myself, my theme for 2022 is I wanted to focus on speaking clearly, thinking clearly, and communicating clearly, because I find those 3 are so important, right, for the BRM role. The first one I've already spoken about, which was Leadership is Language, and by David Marquette, and it's pretty much a playbook that at first it makes you align that a lot of what we're doing now is based on the Industrial Revolution, where you kind of think your boss knows everything, they're going to make the decision, and you're just kind of going to roll with it. And with this new climate of collaborative experimentation that we're living through, it's group work, and it's every person needs to speak, and they need to give us their insights. And then collaboratively, we come together and we're like, all right, what's the best way to move forward? So for Leadership is Language is just great to really develop the language to get everyone involved as a leader, which is so important. The second book is Your Next 5 Moves. It's on strategy. It's by Patrick Bet-David. Yeah, so watched a lot of his YouTube videos and have been a fan. And you know what? I thought he was so good at YouTube that there was no way possible he could, the book could be better than that content, right? And then for this, I was blown away. And he just has this way of taking a complicated, how do you say, a complicated situation and just realigning it for you. And you kind of get those aha moments. So he was saying from the strategy aspect, he goes, usually individuals, they're able to do one strategy. Right? You do one move. That move, it's based on ego, emotion, or fear. And it's a reactive move, which we want to try to avoid. Then he said, individuals that play chess, they're able to see 12 moves ahead. And this is pretty much Elon Musk's brother said he's able to really see at that level. That's mastery. And it's not available to everyone. So first, I'm like total transparency, 12 moves ahead, not even going to happen. I think, even if I was reading a book a week for 20 years, it would be hard to get there. So for Patrick Bet-David, he said all individuals can look 5 moves ahead. And within those 5 moves, you have a strategy, right? And you can what he calls quick action, right? Don't just build a strategy and don't act, and just not act on it. Strategy is made to act on. And once you're able to think 5 moves ahead, you're able to really say, all right, what's my counter move? This didn't work, but I've thought about this to a point where I know I can, move here. And so that book is, I loved it. I love the simplicity of it. And I just, you've seen him on YouTube. He has this voice and he has, just this
Amazing.
whole,
well, I've seen this movie more of the valuetainment that he does for entrepreneurship is amazing. I mean, he does so much value to people listening to his podcast and YouTube videos. I definitely think that's a great book, Jasbir, that you talked about. I would definitely encourage people to look at that, the 5 moves, to go ahead on that. Go ahead.
And the third book I was going to say is from our friend, Joe Tumpinka, who's very much involved in the BRM world. He's the board chair at the BRM Institute. He wrote a book, it's back in 2014, it's called IT Business Partnership. Now that was what BRMs were called prior to. And when I picked up the book, I was thinking, all right, 2014, we're in 2022. Is it going to have value? Am I going to really be able to relate to it? Now, there's some terms, some, thought processes that have changed, but wow, like just the real life examples he's able to provide us in that book, and what worked for his teams, what didn't. And that is actually my top book that I would say, if you're going to really read something as a BRM, start off with IT Business Partnership and then work yourself right from there. And it's a great playbook of, there was one simple slide where he had said, all right, you could, if your partners don't know their long-term strategy, sit down with them and say, what are your pains today? And how can we make a better tomorrow? One slide, cut it in half, you have your 2, let's just go through it. Something like that's so simple. I didn't think about it, right? So this is where I would totally suggest, let that be the first book you read as a BRM.
Excellent. So I think it's been a great insights today. But so what are your final thoughts for someone aspiring to be a BRM? Is it a good place to be in, or is something tricky and dicey? Where do you think, if someone is still weighing between picking up a BRM role and another role, what would you say? Oh,
I would say definitely try it out. Try out the BRM role, right? Because like I said, we're all a BRM to some aspect in our day-to-day lives. And just from the evolution of the BRM, with the new structure that's being developed for the BRM Institute, kind of going away from just IT based and being business based, right? So I think we're going to see more and more BRMs that are throughout the business, and it's going to be really interesting. So from that end, definitely a great place to be, a great role to be in. And for me, the cool aspect of it, it's always evolving, it's always changing. And you're able to be at the forefront with the business as well as tech. And it's, if you like to learn, if you're curious, it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be at.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jasbir, for spending time with us on this episode of the BRM Brown Bag. I'm sure that your valuable insights, including the books that you read and some of those aspects that you need to look out for as a new BRM, is going to be super helpful. And I'm sure that people are going to enjoy reaching out and enjoying this whole episode. And I love this book a week. So reach out to Jasbir if you want to know what is her latest book she picks up, because she's on a trot. And I hope that we will have a lot more in the years to come. Thank you so much, Jasbir, and all the best for your success in the BRM role that you play.
Thank you so much, Suresh.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will be back on our next episode of the BRM Brown Bag. Until then, stay safe and have a great rest of the evening. Thank you very much.